Welcome back, everybody, to Niners Now. I'm your host, Brady Grustas, at GrustasBrady on X. You can follow me there. And today we've got breaking news about two 49ers wide receivers. After that, I want to shed some light on four additions that the Niners have made this offseason that I think are going to make a real impact this very season. Those could be free agents, draft picks, trade acquisitions, UDFAs, you name it, we'll talk about it. Now, I'm going to stick to talking about the players because we have talked at length this offseason already about what Robert Saleh and Brant Boyer are going to bring to the team. I want to focus today on the guys actually on the field. And stick around until later when we talk about some of the top remaining free agents and if the 49ers should bring them in. Before we begin, go ahead and subscribe down below, leave a like, leave a comment, and let's get into it. I want to start off today with the wide receiver official updates. According to ESPN, 49ers wide receiver Demarcus Robinson pleaded no contest to his misdemeanor DUI charge, which lands him a small fine and 3 years of probation, as well as some court-mandated programs. So that's it. Robinson's legal situation has officially been resolved, which means it's now up to the NFL to decide whether or not they're going to suspend him. Most people have expected this to result in a 3-game suspension, and that's not official yet, but the 49ers signed him despite knowing that this was probably in the cards for Robinson. If it does end up happening, you'll hear about it here on this channel. Also, on Monday, Adam Schefter tweeted that Jauan Jennings would like either a new contract or a trade. Jennings is set to make $7.5 million this year, which is way below market value for a near 1,000-yard receiver like Jennings was last year. Now, Jennings is apparently not going to hold out of training camp while he waits for a new contract, which is great news for us as the fans. I think the Niners should probably pay Jauan Jennings. I'll get that out there right now. He's got all the leverage with all these question marks at receiver, right? And he played absolutely incredibly last year. He was our leading receiver, and he was just fantastic. Leading wide receiver, I should say. It does kind of feel inevitable that Jennings is going to leave San Francisco eventually. In the last 2 years, they've drafted 4 wide receivers. But if I'm John Lynch, I'd try to give Jennings another short-term deal, but I'd give him a raise, right? Closer to $15 to $18 million per season. It's a pretty tricky situation because if you give him a long-term contract, you really limit your opportunities for the young guys on your roster like Pearsall and Cowing and Watkins. But if you don't give him enough money, you may lose Jauan for good. What do you think of the newest contract drama? Will it ever end with this 49ers team? I mean, I thought we had a full offseason with no contract drama, but I guess here we are now. Should the 49ers pay Jauan Jennings $15 million this year, or should they trade him to a team like New England or Cleveland? Let me know in the comments down below. Moving on to players who hopefully will not be missing any games, I want to talk about guys that the Niners have already signed who I think are going to make a big impact for the team this year. Let's start with a guy who didn't get a ton of positive press this spring, tight end Luke Farrell. Farrell was signed pretty early into free agency, one of the first days, and was announced as a 3-year deal worth up to $20 million. Now, that's a lot of money for a tight end that most of the 49er faithful have never heard of. And you put it into context, this is around the time that the 49ers were releasing Javon Hargrave, releasing Malik Collins, releasing Leonard Floyd. There was a lot of talent leaving the team kind of all at once. And it was all under the guise of, okay, we're going to save some money, right? We're lowering our cap hits. And then one of the moves that they make is they go out and give a tight end $20 million. But those two key words, up to, carry a lot of weight. At maximum value, that deal is going to be worth roughly $20 million, just under $7 million per year. But if you look at the official details of the contract, Farrell will never even get $4.5 million in a single season. That's way more affordable than it was initially reported. His deal is honestly pretty comparable to the deal that Charlie Woerner, former 49er, got from the Falcons last offseason. Now, Woerner wasn't exactly a huge part of the passing game, but it's clear to see that they really missed his run blocking last year. Farrell, in my opinion, is clearly supposed to fill Woerner's role. I think the Niners made a mistake letting Charlie Woerner walk and get that kind of deal from Atlanta. I think they know that it was a mistake, and I think that by bringing in Farrell, they are fixing that mistake that they made last year. Honestly, I think Farrell plays quite a lot this season. The Niners are going to have to weather the storm at wide receiver, like we just talked about. So running more 12 personnel makes a lot of sense. And for those of you who don't know, 12 personnel is any play where there's one running back and two tight ends on the field. The first number is always the number of running backs, and the second number is always the number of tight ends. So 12 is one running back, two tight ends, and 21, for example, is two running backs, one tight end. Anyways, running 12 personnel gives you a lot more beef up front and some better run blocking, which Lord knows Kyle Shanahan is always looking for. It also allows you to avoid playing guys at wide receiver who might not exactly be ready yet. So if they play a lot of 12 personnel, which I expect them to do, my bet is that you'll see number 89, Luke Farrell, out on that field quite a bit. I'm sure that Kyle Juszczyk is also going to be worked in as a tight end in those 12 personnel sets sometimes. But let's not forget that they did release Juice earlier this offseason before bringing him back on a lower contract. And Luke's a pretty solid blocker, so I'm predicting he becomes a pretty important part of this team next year, even if it's a more under-the-radar role. Sticking with that under-the-radar theme, another free agent that I think will make a huge impact is none other than Thomas Morstead. Folks, we have a new punter in the building for the first time since, I think, 2019. Raise your hand if you've already forgotten that we signed a new punter this offseason. The special teams unit was pretty much cleaned out last year, coaches and players alike, with Jake Moody being the only survivor of this mass exodus. We said goodbye to the punter from down under, Mitch Wishnowsky, the Australian, and in his place, of course, is the 39-year-old Thomas Morstead, entering year 17 in the NFL. That's insane. 17 years. I'm comfortable calling Morstead a punting legend, and he's a guy who spent 2.5 years with the Robert Saleh Jets, coached by new 49ers special teams coordinator Brant Boyer. So not only does he have a really long and established career, he's also got some familiarity with the coaches in place. Now, hopefully, he's not going to punt here as often as he did with the Jets because he was putting up some pretty unreal numbers there. Last year, he punted 63 times, and the year before, 99 punts. That, of course, was the year that Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles in week 1. 99 punts is unbelievable, even for a Zach Wilson-led team. That's nearly 6 punts per game. Your offense has to be so bad to punt 6 times a game. But honestly, what I'm most excited for with Thomas Morstead is his consistency. We all know that Wishnowsky dealt with some injuries, including a back problem that kept him out for most of last season. Thomas Morstead, in his 16 years in the NFL, has played 255 games. He's only missed 5. 255 games to 5 missed games. For context, he has played 51 times more games than he has missed. I can hardly believe that stat is actually true, and I triple-checked it while I was researching last night, but it is true. This guy's been in the league since 2009, and he has missed 5 games. Anyways, with Thomas Morstead, Brant Boyer, and new long snapper John Weeks now joining the special teams unit, I'm really excited for real consistency and a group that is hopefully not a total train wreck like it was last year. Now, my next 2 names on this list are both rookies. And to start, I want to talk about someone who's been anything but under the radar, right? Mykel Williams, the 11th overall pick in this year's draft. He's been examined and he's been scrutinized all spring and summer long, right? He's hardly under the radar. My personal take is that I was expecting the pick to be Mykel for a while leading up to draft night. Part of it was that I heard some rumblings from the organization itself that they were super high on him. But also, some of it had to do with the fact that he's just such a good fit for what San Francisco likes to do. Since Kyle Shanahan took over, there's been an evolution of this hybrid inside-outside pass rusher role on the defense. Brad Graham, shout out to him, makes some excellent 49ers content. He calls it the dog role. right? You think about guys like Charles Omenihu, who probably did it best, right? There was Omenihu. Arden Key played this role really well. Eric Armstead at some points, even Kerry Hyder from time to time. It's a bigger edge rusher who will line up on the outside, mostly on first and second downs, and give you some real beef in run defense. And then he takes one of those defensive tackle spots on third downs or obvious passing situations to give you more juice and athleticism when going up against a guard or a center. Now, this isn't the only way that they can use Michael. When I was watching him coming out of Georgia, my initial thought was that he was better suited to stay on the outside full time. But after night one of the draft, Kyle Shanahan told team reporter Lindsay Polaris that Michael, quote, rushes over guards as good as anyone we believed in the draft, and he can rush at tackles as good as anyone in the draft, end quote. Now that's extremely high praise, especially considering that to many, Michael's pass rush wasn't even the best part of his game. The trait that he was really going to hang his hat on and what was really going to make him an NFL player was his run defense. I see Michael as a day one starting caliber run defender in the league. And while I'm not as high on his pass rush ability as Shanahan and John Lynch are, I think that Michael's ceiling is higher than any rookie defensive lineman across the league, including Abdul Carter, who went third overall. Michael is still just so young. He turned 21 years old just recently, just last month. He has prototypical size, frame, length, strength, all this stuff that you just can't teach. So I think that Michael will be a week one starter as a rookie thanks to his super high floor as a run defender. And if his pass rush really starts to take off, then we're looking at a defensive rookie of the year candidate. Needless to say, that's impact. Now, my last name here, I can't go a full hour without talking about this guy. He was my favorite pick of last year's class. CJ West, defensive tackle from Indiana, big number 99 in the middle. West is a big dude with a big personality. He's been all over the 49ers social media since he was drafted, but I'm most excited for his play on the field. West is one of the best run defenders to come out of college last year. He's strong as all get out, and he can hold up against double teams, and he has some quickness to his feet. I love his game, frankly, and it may remind 49ers fans of DJ Jones. Those guys are built pretty similarly, right? They're big boulders in the middle with some sneaky speed. I know I'll never forget DJ Jones shooting through the offensive line and chasing down Russell Wilson for a huge sack in the 2019 regular season. I mean, that was a great play and what I'll always remember DJ Jones for. Now, West doesn't quite have that level of pass rush yet, but hopefully he can use his quickness and use his tools to develop that bag later. Now, West has a really nice player profile, and I thought he was excellent value in the fourth round, but the reason that I'm bringing him up as a high-impact addition actually has more to do with the team around him. Now, I'm sure I don't need to remind you of what the 49ers defensive tackle room looked like going into the draft. I mean, there's a non-zero chance that the two rookies, Alfred Collins and CJ West, are the best defensive tackles on the team right now. But with Collins still unsigned and apparently dealing with a foot injury, I just couldn't put him on this list. So I went with West. Side note, for any of you guys worried about Alfred Collins and the lack of news on that front, most of the second round picks in this year's draft have yet to sign with their teams, with agents all over the league or jockeying for more guaranteed money. I'll actually have a story on this in tomorrow's video, so be sure to check back if you'd like some more details on that story. Come training camp, though, I'm sure dominoes are going to begin to fall and we'll see Collins signed, and hopefully by then his foot will be completely healthy. Back on track, though, talking about CJ West, I feel fairly confident that by the end of the preseason, CJ West is an entrenched starter on this team, just like Dominic Pooney was last year. Even if West is pulled off the field to let Michael Williams rush up from the inside on passing downs, I think CJ is going to play a whole bunch and be a big impact player for the Niners. So those are some additions that the 49ers have made that I am a big fan of. Now let's go over a few free agents out there that I think could really help this team. I'll be honest, it's pretty slim pickings as it usually is in mid-July, but there are a few players left out there who could still contribute. First, I'll preface this by saying I consider this pretty unlikely, but wide receiver Keenan Allen is still out there, unsigned. Allen, of course, the former Cal Bear, NorCal legend. He's had a long, productive career with the Chargers before spending last year in Chicago, where he was still a pretty decent player. He had 70 catches, 744 yards, and 7 touchdowns last year. But why would the 49ers consider this move? Well, the beginning of the season is setting up to be pretty rocky at wide receiver. I'd say that's probably the biggest storyline facing the 49ers right now is that position. You've got Ayuk missing early in the year, Demarcus Robinson potentially suspended, Ricky Pearsall's got uncertainty at health, Juwan Jennings wants a new deal. It should smooth out once those situations are resolved, but you're relying on a whole lot of youth until then. So Allen would be a steady veteran presence early in the season and a nice role player as we move later and start to add those guys back. Now, like I said, I do not expect this signing to happen. Allen's made it pretty clear that he'd like to play in Los Angeles, likely reuniting with the Chargers, I'd assume. While the wide receiver room has its question marks, it's also pretty full. Brandon Ayuk, Demarcus Robinson, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Jacob Cowan, Jordan Watkins, Junior Bergen, Isaiah Hodgins, Isaiah Nayer, Tariq Owens, all of these guys will be fighting for spots on the 53-man roster. And adding Allen into the mix would certainly make sense in the short term, but it's going to cost one of these guys a shot at making an impact long term. The receiver group is very full, but if you look over at the safety room, it's a little bit less so. With Malik Mustafa likely missing the first few games of the season and Jair Brown having a massive sophomore slump, the 49ers may be smart to add a guy like Julian Blackmon, who is the top free agent safety still on the market, besides Justin Simmons. He's a productive turnover safety who has improved his run defense numbers year over year. Blackmon actually visited with the 49ers when he was a free agent last offseason, and he's been linked to San Francisco a few times since. He ended up re-signing with the Colts, where he's played his whole career. 3 of his Colts 5 seasons were under former defensive coordinator Gus Bradley. Now, Bradley is the 49ers assistant head coach this year. Bradley obviously will not be calling the defense, but Blackmon has produced in that style, with 7 picks in the last 2 years combined. The concern with me with Blackmon is that there's been plenty of reported interest on both sides, but instead of bringing in Blackmon, they decided to go with the combination of Jason Pinnock and Richie Grant. So I feel like there's got to be something preventing this signing. Is it Blackmon's contract demands? Is it the Niners not committing to starting him all year? That's impossible to say. We can't know from the outside, but unfortunately, I think if Blackmon were ever going to be a 49er, he would have signed already. Now, Keenan Allen and Julian Blackmon would theoretically both be starters for the 49ers, at least for parts of the season. But the last name on my list would be a depth piece, a man in the defensive tackle rotation, and that's Jordan Phillips. Now, this is not Jordan Phillips from Maryland, who was just drafted by the Dolphins this April. This is 10-year vet Jordan Phillips, who last played for Buffalo. Pretty funny that there's 2 defensive tackles named Jordan Phillips right now. It's like how there's 2 offensive guards named Connor McGovern. It's funny that that happens. It's funny that that happened even once. Crazy that it happened twice. Find a nickel, you know? Anyways, veteran Jordan Phillips is nothing more than like a rotational piece at this point. He's a decent pass rusher still. A PFF gave him a slightly above average grade there, and he would likely compete for that 4th or 5th defensive tackle spot, giving Saleh another penetrator that he can affect quarterbacks with. The downside for Phillips, obviously, is that he's already 32 years old and just can't defend the run at an NFL level anymore. But if your 53-man roster has Alfred Collins, CJ West, Kevin Givens, Evan Anderson, and Jordan Phillips at defensive tackle, I think you can really do a lot worse than that, honestly. So Luke Farrell, Thomas Morstead, Michael Williams, and CJ West are all good additions the Niners have made so far, and I'd like to see them still add Keenan Allen, Julian Blackmon, and Jordan Phillips before Week 1 gets here. Am I crazy? Did I miss any obvious names? Should they add Justin Simmons instead? Do you think the guys that I mentioned are good additions? Who do you want the 49ers to sign? Let me know in the comments. Leave a comment, leave a like, and let me know if there's any topics you'd like to see me cover. Thank you all for watching, and subscribe for 49ers videos 5 days a week. I'm Brady Grustas at Grustas Brady on X. This has been Niners Now, and I'll see you tomorrow.